joining us now from Tel Aviv. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin, and here with me, MSNBC host Ayman Mohyeldin. So, Erin, we just got another batch of hostages back. Who are they, and who have the Israelis released?
Well, Katie, 11 hostages and 2 foreign nationals has been released as part of the first day of the ceasefire extension agreement. They have now crossed over into Rafah, having been transferred from Hamas to the International Red Cross. They are now with the Israeli military. They will then be flown to 5 different Israeli hospitals for medical treatment. Well, they'll have an opportunity to be reunited with their families. We also know that the oldest of the hostages released is 85 years old. She helped found the kibbutz Nir Oz, where a quarter of that kibbutz on October 7th was either kidnapped or killed. All of those released yesterday were from kibbutz Nir Oz. So this is, you know, the leader of the kibbutz saying that it calling really for the remaining hostages in Gaza in full to be released. But the question, of course, being how long will this ceasefire last? And that, of course, is an open question, Katie.
Ayman, let's talk about what is going to happen tomorrow and then what could happen after that. I know CIA Director Bill Burns is in Qatar right now. What is he trying to do, and what sort of how is he being heard?
Yeah, I think it's important to note also the director of Mossad, David Barnea, is also in Doha as well. So it's a trilateral meeting between the Qatari Prime Minister, the head of Mossad, as well as Director Burns. And the purpose of the meeting, as I understand it from speaking to sources there, as well as NBC News is reporting, is they are now talking about what happens after this 2-day truce extension expires.
Tomorrow.
It ends tomorrow, and part of the extension was because Hamas had been saying that they did not have all the hostages. They needed to go out, gather more hostages, consolidate them. Once they were able to prove and provide evidence to Qatar as the intermediary that they have more hostages to release, the truce was extended. Now we're waiting to see if there are even more hostages that they can go out and find. So we'll get a better sense of that by the end of tomorrow, whether or not the truce is extended. But even if that specific part of women and children, there are no more hostages, the negotiations now are beginning to define new parameters for another batch of hostages, which could include, for example, the elderly or perhaps women who are serving in the Israeli military that have been taken, because Hamas has kind of left soldiers away from this first round of negotiations. So we're starting to get a better sense that the negotiations are focused around the new parameters for this new batch of possible hostages to be released.
And who have the Israelis been releasing in exchange?
They have been releasing Palestinians that they have detained. The number now is close, or it will be once all of this is done, close to 300. Many of them children under the age of 18, many of them without charges, many of them held on charges of terrorism, which is a very, in the Palestinian context, very obscure. Sometimes it says, minor as throwing stones. The Israelis obviously say, no, many of these were people that were either accomplices to attempted murder or attempted stabbing of Israeli soldiers. But the process in which Palestinians are detained has always come under a lot of scrutiny by human rights organizations, that it's not due process. Many of them are held arbitrarily in detention for extended periods of time with no charges. And so as you see with Palestinians that are now being released in the West Bank, many of them are being celebrated, welcomed by their relatives, by their family, by their community.
Yeah. I'm going to ask this of Eyal Hulata, who is a former Israeli National Security Advisor, in just a moment. But I want to get your take or any insight on the poll that I started the show with. Palestinians not happy with Hamas before October 7th. After this bombardment, what is your sense of who the Palestinians, the Gazans, are blaming?
Well, it's a really good question. It's very hard for me here in New York to be able to assess what people in Gaza are feeling.
But is limited.
Absolutely. But I will tell you this. We're starting to hear from actually Gazans themselves who are writing about this. There was a really good piece in the Forward by a Palestinian who lives here in the United States now, but his family's still in Gaza. And he talked about this in a very important way by saying that, in fact, yes, Hamas had lost a lot of popularity in Gaza in the run-up to October 7th. But one of the things that has happened now is that this military bombardment campaign is likely going to get Palestinians to view Hamas once again as the face of resistance, not as the government. And part of that is because the concept of resistance resistance, something that the Palestinians fundamentally believe in, is something that the Palestinians will rally behind, no matter what that cost is, no matter what that perception of the violence that they now have endured is. That does not mean that they approved or liked or accepted the way Hamas had governed Gaza and the way that they had, as you said in that poll, become extremely unpopular among the people there.
It's a mindset misunderstanding that I think a lot of people who don't understand where the Palestinians' head could be at after all this. It's been invaluable talking to you. Eamon, thank you very much. And Aaron, thank you as well.